My topic today is going to be assisted suicide. Now, other shows and newspapers have touched on the recent introduction of a bill called C-384, an act to amend the criminal code, or right to die with dignity. But what I want to do in the next few minutes is to take us through the bill, clause by clause, and discuss the arguments against and those for the bill. Not just my opinion, but you'll probably get that too. The best place to start with any subject is defining your terms. What is euthanasia? What is assisted suicide? And later, what does it mean when we say we have a right to our life? Euthanasia, and I just discovered this actually just a couple of days ago.
That's what you'll find when you start working on this show.
Yeah, you do a bit of research. You actually find out some facts instead of opinions,
right.
Instead of making it up like how many Russians. Euthanasia is from the Greek, meaning good death. So eu means good and thanatos means death. Today, we take this to mean dying without pain or dying with dignity. We often use the term when we say we're putting down an animal. We euthanize them. But unlike animal euthanasia, human euthanasia can be broken down into two areas: voluntary consensual euthanasia and involuntary or non-consensual euthanasia. We need to clarify that right from the start that Bill C-384 refers only to consensual euthanasia. Regardless of whether it is consensual or not, there's three types or means to euthanize somebody: passive, non-active, or active. Now, passive euthanasia is practiced every day by many ill people. It's simply not treating an illness and allowing that illness to take its natural course. For example, a cancer patient who refuses chemotherapy. A non-active euthanasia is withdrawing treatment or life support, like pulling the plug, in other words. Now, active euthanasia is actually the use of some substance or another to kill the person. An example would be a Dr. Jack Kevorkian-style machine, which would inject drugs into the body to terminate the life of the patient, or increasing the dosage of morphine to the point of death. In any of these methods, if any of these methods are performed by the ill person himself, it would be called suicide. But if the patient is incapable of pulling the plug or increasing their morphine dosage themselves, and they actually require help, then we are into the area of assisted suicide. As it stands now, the Criminal Code of Canada outlaws assisted suicide. And I'll quote you from Section 14 of the Criminal Code. It's called consent to death. Quote, "No person is entitled to consent to have death inflicted on him, and such consent does not affect the criminal responsibility of any person by whom death may be inflicted on the person by whom consent is given," unquote.
Can I... It actually says you cannot consent to your own death?
You cannot consent to your own death, and it does not, and if you do consent, it doesn't absolve the person who helped you die.
It begs the opposite question, doesn't it? Can you consent to your own life? It's a choice you have to make every day.
That's interesting,
you know?
Yeah. I sort of get into that later on.
Okay.
Yeah. In other words, even if you consent, it's not considered legal, and anyone who assists in your suicide may be held responsible for culpable homicide.
I'd hate to be, dead illegally. They'll come and get me.
Yeah, what's the penalty?
Yeah.
Section 241 of the Criminal Code is titled Suicide and reads, quote, everyone who A, counsels a person to commit suicide, or B, aids or abets a person to commit suicide, whether suicide ensues or not, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years, unquote. This is where Bill C-384 comes in. It's been introduced by Bloc Québécois MP Francine Lalonde and has reached second reading in the House of Commons. The bill would amend the code to allow doctors to assist suicide and not be held criminally responsible. However, 9 conditions must be met first, and all 9 have to be satisfied. Now, the first 4 conditions relate to the person who's requesting assistance to commit suicide, the patient. They must be of 18 years of age, in other words, an adult. 2, the person either A, continues after trying or expressly refusing the appropriate treatments available to experience severe physical or mental pain without any prospect of relief, or B, suffers from a mental illness, or I'm sorry, not mental illness, terminal illness. Terminal illness.
In fact, that's an issue that comes up when people want to consent, whether they're capable of doing
whether
that.
they're lucid,
Right.
And actually there's a condition there which covers that. 3, the person has provided a medical practitioner while appearing to be lucid, there's the topic there, with 2 written requests more than 10 days apart expressly stating that person's free and informed consent to opt to die. And 4, the fourth condition on the patient is that the person has designated in writing with free and informed consent before 2 witnesses with no personal interest in the death of the person, another person to act on his or her behalf with any medical practitioner when the person does not appear to be lucid. In other words, you can set it up in advance in case your mental faculties go later on. Now, the next 5
Which
conditions-
surprisingly, from some of the stuff I'm looking at here, a lot of people do.
Yes.
Yeah, they take that precaution.
Yeah.
So nobody can argue, well, you're only saying that now because you're in pain.
Right.
Yeah.
The next 5 conditions refer to the medical practitioner. Medical practitioner, by the way, means a person duly qualified by provincial law to practice medicine. The first one is the medical practitioner has requested and received written confirmation of the diagnosis from another medical practitioner with no personal interest in the death of the person. The second one, the medical practitioner has no reasonable grounds to believe that the written requests were made under duress or while the person was not lucid. So we're talking about a sane person here requesting this. And 3, the medical practitioner has informed the person of the consequences of his or her requests and of the alternatives available to him or her. 4, the medical practitioner acts in the manner indicated by the person, it being understood that the person may at any time revoke the request made. And 5, the medical practitioner provides the coroner with a copy of the confirmation of the diagnosis. Now, on the face of it, I personally think that this is a very reasonable bill. But there are a number of people who object and object vehemently with it.
Well, let's talk about that after the break, because this is a perfect point to break, because we've got a couple of clips from Voyager, which it's amazing how many Star Treks dealt with this issue. And
That's for sure.
And dealt with it in very explicit ways that are just amazing. So we're going to take a break for a couple of interesting clips and some commercials. When we come back, we'll continue with this. I'm Bob Metz, and I'm with Robert Vaughn, our co-host today on Just Right, CHRW 94.9 FM.